Good afternoon and hello everybody. It is 5 o'clock in Nairobi, Kenya, and we would like to welcome you and to even know where you're joining us from. Welcome to the Seasoned Woman webinar. We would like to know where you're joining us from. Feel free to invite your friends, share the link, let others join us so that we can get started together, so that we can flow together. Somebody says, Betty, you say that you cannot hear. Let me know if anybody can hear me. Sally, are you able to hear me?
Yes, Kezi, I can hear you.
Awesome, awesome. Rosie, thank you for letting me know that you can hear me. So Betty, please just check your connection. Once again, welcome to everybody. Please put it in the chat where you're joining us from. We're very excited to be having you here today. As always, we'll be having a very special gift to one of us who is joining us today. If today is your birthday, or if you're celebrating a special occasion today, could be an anniversary, could be a very special thing that you're celebrating today, please let us know in the chat box. And we'll be very happy to give you one of Sally Mahihu's books. So I will see it in the chat and we will be happy to give it to you. Additionally, if you have a question or a comment on today's conversation, please put it in the Q&A box. We will give enough time to engage around questions. Put your questions or your comment in the Q&A box. Welcome again. Invite your friends, your family, your colleagues, and let us have this conversation together. I would like to now welcome our host, Mrs. Sally Mahihu. Welcome.
Thank you, Kezi. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. We continue with our Seasoned Woman webinars. These are conversations that we're holding together. My name is Sally Mahihu. As Kezi has told you, I am the founder of the Seasoned Woman Forum. It is a forum for the empowerment of women. And I see now we are also empowering men, so I thank God for that. And it is based basically on 7 aspects. I call them the 7 P's of your destiny. And this is number 1, your person, your identity. The second P is your purpose, your calling. The third P is your place, your positioning, where God has ordained you to operate from. The fourth P is your people, your relationships, networks and associations. The other P is your process, your making, because none of us can actually attain or fulfill our purpose or reach destiny without some kind of making. And then there's the other P, which is your principles. We talk of values, ethics, standards that enable us to get to where God has ordained us to go. And the last P is your prize, as in the rewards after paying the price, as in the sacrifice, the pain, the discipline. There's always a price at the end of the day, their rewards. So based on that, I'm a recently published author of a series of books. There's a 5-part series based on those topics, basically on those topics. The first one is your naming and your defining. That's the one on your purpose, your identity crisis, issues, etc. Then there's the second one, which is your calling and your positioning, talking about your calling and your place of purpose, your sphere of influence. And then there's a third one, which we're discussing today, which is your relationships and networks. That's about relationships and networks. And then there's another one, which is about your making and shaping. And this is the one I said about destiny requires that we be made and shaped to go through process. And then the last in that series is your harvest and your legacy. Basically about the rewards I'm talking about. There are rewards when we do observe and we adhere to a certain manner in which God has set down for us to fulfill destiny. I have 2 other books. The other one is Moving from a Place of Distress to a Place of Destiny. It's an interesting one. And then there is seasoned servanthood. I believe that true servanthood is part and parcel of our ability to fulfill destiny. And I also believe that as people of destiny, knowing how to move from your place of distress to your place of destiny is crucial. So today's conversation is basically is based on that book, number 3, Your Relationships and Your Networks and Associations. And this particular conversation is from a chapter in that book, which I've titled Suspect Suitors. Suspect Suitors. And as I said, when we talk of empowering women, we empower you in terms of guiding you to and challenging and provoking you to examine your choices in terms of relationships, in terms of romantic relationships, in terms of when you are meeting your spouse, your destiny spouse. And I write about 7 types of suspect suitors in that chapter in my book. And we've already discussed one extensively in 2 previous webinars, The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. And that was very enlightening. The feedback from that has been fantastic. Today, we're zeroing in on the 2nd type of suspect suitor, who in my book, I call the serial deal chaser. But for purposes of a wider understanding, I've titled it The Reluctant Breadwinner. What I'm talking about here is the type of suitor who is allergic to work. I give some descriptions of him in my book. I talk of the man who is reluctant. I even talk of the woman as well. I describe the man, the reluctant suitor, and I also talk of his counterpart, who I call the soap opera diva, in terms of these two, either the man or the woman, are allergic to work. I mean, in any relationship during courtship, it becomes quite clear that they're not prepared to exert themselves, to apply themselves, to work, to be breadwinners in the relationship, or to contribute financially. They want to be taken care of by the other party in the relationship, by their spouse. And I talk of them in terms of, there's obviously a laziness there, there's an entitlement, there is a lack of gratitude where one feels entitled to be taken care of and isn't grateful even when they are taken care of. And I talk of a character who is reluctant to do their part in a relationship in terms of building the resources and the finances, is also one who will usually use your connections or your relationships to try and do some business or some deals. But in the process of doing so, often they do it in an unprofessional manner. They lack work ethics. They lack a professional kind of manner in which to operate. And they end up making you look bad. If it is the man, there's a tendency to resent you as a woman if you're doing better, if you have a position of influence, or you're bringing in more resources into the relationship. They often may begin to resent you because from a strict, natural, and even biblical point of view, he is supposed to be able to provide, even if you're chipping in together. So there's some dysfunctions there, some proclivities, some weaknesses in these characteristics. But as I stated in earlier webinars, we're not here to judge, because these men and women are our daughters, our sons, our brothers and sisters, our cousins. They are ours. So we're not here to judge. We are here to address these relationship dilemmas with a view to understanding how to rectify, cure, and help one another, so that at some point, then you're saying that you're entering into a relationship pursuant to courtship with some kind of healing from these proclivities and weaknesses. So having said that, I don't take up too much time. I want us to go straight into the panel discussion, because I have a wonderful set of panels I've invited for this webinar, who are going to answer questions that I've prepared for them for purposes of covering this topic. And as I invite them, they will introduce themselves. Each of them will introduce themselves, and they'll tell us what they do and who they are, etc. So I will start with Rosemary Carlos, because she's the one not from Kenya. She's from Swaziland. And so we'll do the courtesy of starting with her. So Rosemary, welcome to this webinar. Welcome to this conversation. It is, we are honored to have you, and we know the wealth of value you'll add to this conversation. So welcome, Rosemary. Please tell us who you are, what you do, and then I will ask you to go straight into the first question, which is, I am aware that you have written a book recently and published and launched it, and published and launched. And I want you to tell us a bit about that book. What does it deal with? Does it touch on the topic we're talking about? And if so, what do you say in your book about this conversation we're having today? Welcome, Rosemary Carlos. Welcome. In Kenya, we say karibu sana.
Sally, we are trying to find Rosie and just to make sure that she's able to join. So perhaps we
can go to the
Rose Musau.
We can go to the next. Yes. The next. So do I have Betty Ochieng? Is Betty Ochieng there? Kezi?
We have Rose Musau.
Do we have Betty Ochieng? There's an order in which I want to take them. There's an order in which I want to do it. So do we have Betty Ochieng?
She's yet to join us.
Do we have Robert, Coach?
Coach will be coming. Okay, great. I see.
Do we have Robert Mbugua?
I see Betty.
Yes,
Betty is just.
We have Coach Robert. We have Robert Mbugua. Thank you, Robert. Do we have yes. Coach Robert?
Coach has requested for 5 minutes.
That's okay.
He will be with us in 5 minutes.
Very good. So let me go directly to Rose Musau, who's available. Hi, Rose. Welcome. Tell us who you are and what you do. And then straight to your first question, which is as follows. Rose, as I've said, the conversation we're having today is about, to put it very bluntly, without any judgment in any way, the one aspect of it is about men who are kept by women, and the women who keep them, basically, who don't want to work. They're reluctant breadwinners during the courtship and even subsequently during the marriage. So Rose, after you've told us who you are and what you do, you'll answer this question. You'll answer the following question. Why do you think, what do you think causes a woman to keep a man? What could be her rationale when she's courting and even eventually marrying this man who is not providing, and she's doing all the providing in that situation? What do you think causes her to accept this situation? What could be her rationale?
Thank you, Sally. And good evening. Good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name, as you've heard, is Rose Musau. 18 years ago, if you had told me one day I'll be having this conversation with, speaking to, as a panelist, speaking to a group of women and men, I would not have believed it was possible, because 18 years ago, I walked out of a home in Karen. And there's a reason I tell you, just bear that in mind. There's context to why I mentioned Karen. Yes. And I moved out of Karen and went to live on Gong Road in an apartment. So I also want you to know, my name was on the deed. My name was on the title deed of the house in Karen. And I moved to a place of peace. And until today, I cannot thank God enough because of that peace. I'm not Kikuyu, but the Kikuyus call peace Thayo. And for me, peace Thayo is just, it's what I feel all the time when I think about my life. It is a life with Thayo. In Kamba, I am Kamba, and in Kamba, Thayo means life. So the Kikuyus here will say, peace is Thayo. The Kambas for life, they say Thayo. So it's the same word. And I'm so thankful for that Thayo. Now, the reason I'm on this panel is because of my life experiences. I wouldn't be here if I hadn't had the experiences I've had. So I am here, I'm qualified to speak to those who are having the same experience as I have had in the past. And I also want to tell you, this experience and my conversation is not for everyone. And there's a recovery group that says, take what you can out of a conversation and leave the rest. So I'm going to ask you, without judgment, take what you can that touches and will touch a nerve with you, or you can relate with, and leave the rest. If it's not for you, just leave it. Not just for me, but for the rest of the panelists as well. So I will dive right into this question. And thank you again, Sally. Thank you for having me. It's the first time I'm beginning to tell my story. So I am excited to be here. And I know this is the right time. It's taken 18 years, but this is the right time.
Amen.
So why do I, so what causes a woman to keep a man, and what could be her rationale? I'm in my 50s. If you'd asked me this question in my 30s, in my 40s, and my 50s, my answers would be different. And that's the beauty of age. So why do you keep a man? Especially one that is reluctant. I'm glad you clarified that it's a person who's reluctant to work, a person who doesn't want to
work, yeah.
He doesn't want to work,
but doesn't want, yeah.
He's able to, but doesn't want. And I think everyone has a different reason. And I'll give you my story, so then you can see how it is related to this. So you heard I leave this home in Karen, and I move on to Ngong Road. My kids are growing, they are in high school, and they're both listening in. So hi, kids. Love you. Thank you. Thank you for your support. Anyway, so I leave, and I'm now ready to start dating. And I go to a friend's 40th birthday party, and I see the man, tall, dark, handsome, looking extremely smart. And he's dark. And then he knows how to dance. And I love to dance. And I'm watching him dancing. And he's also watching me dancing. And he comes up to ask me to dance. And he says, oh, I love the way you dance. And I'm like, oh, I was also watching you, and I loved the way you danced. And the rest is history. We got along like a house on fire. He had 4 kids. He talked about each of his children. And to be honest with you, ladies, that's what got me. He knew his children. And for me, I was bowled over because he knew his children. And our relationship ensued, and fantastic. He told me his business was not doing well. And I told him, you know what? I had everything and I left it. So for me, money is not everything. And got into a relationship. I'm big on my marketplace worth is I started a company 25 years ago. So I have to go back to that. Started a company 25 years ago, and it's a recruitment company. I recruit for multinationals and large corporations, and it has done well. It has really done well. And I really thank God for that. And because of my business was doing well, it had already started doing well. And I'm talking about maybe 15 years ago. So it was already doing well. So it was doing well. And I was happy about that. So I tell him it's okay. For me, money is not everything. I left a home and everything else. I left the money. I am fine. As long as you're good to me, I'm good to go. And you know what? My contacts in the market are many. So I hooked him up, and he actually was very lucky. He got a big contract. He was an engineer. So he got a big contract, and he got a contract. And for the time he was working, he worked hard. He wasn't reluctant at all. He worked hard and he earned his money. Along the way, he's borrowing money from me. Oh, I haven't been paid. So, I lend him money. When you get paid, I'll pay you back. He doesn't pay me back. But I'm not driven. I'm not thinking about him and thinking about money. So that's the way the relationship is. And eventually, because I'm a woman who plans, at the end of the year, I ask him, hey, the contract is about to come to an end. What are you planning for next year? He says, well, I don't have anything lined up yet. And I'm like, so what are you thinking about? And I see he's uncomfortable. And I think, okay, well, he's uncomfortable. So let me not push the issue. Long story short, 2 months later, I'm giving him school fees for his children. And I think to myself, this is not, it's not what I signed up for. So I tell him, hey, you know what? Because I'm in recruitment, why don't you send me a skeleton of your CV? I know you haven't worked for anyone for a while. Send me a skeleton of your CV. I'll give it meat and I'll send it to my clients. If somebody has has an opportunity, I'm sure we can get it for you. And that's what happened. That's what I told him that. It didn't happen. So a week later, I'm like, dude, I actually need your CV so that I can put meat to it and I can send it to clients. And I'll tell you what, ladies, first red, okay, there were many red flags, but that one I hadn't heard. He tells me, and he says it like this, I don't want to work for nobody. Okay, I don't want to work for nobody. He says it like that. And I'm like, okay, I'm going for a meeting. I say, I'll call you back later. I call him back later. I say, you know what? People don't work for people because they want to. People don't look for, full-time employment because they want to, but you have children. You have to pay their school fees. I didn't want to tell him, no, I am paying the kids' school fees right now. I didn't want to tell him that, but I was very careful about his ego and all that. I said, you know what? It's just work until, if you get a job, just work until you're able then to go back into running your own business. That's what I'm thinking. And ladies, I wish I could tell you that he agreed and we lived happily ever after. No, he didn't agree to that. So what happened then is he stopped work. He refused completely. And needless to say, because I love myself, I know my self-worth. I was like, I cannot be in a relationship where I'm keeping a man. So I didn't keep him. Even though I don't want to tell you how much money I'd lent him and he's never paid it. I kept him for that time that he didn't pay me back. Let's put it that way. So I didn't keep him, but only because I have self-worth. I know what I'm worth. So I didn't. And that for me is where I'll come in and say, you know what? Every person has a different reason they stay. You cannot say, I can't give you one answer and tell you, oh, they stay because of ABC. Everyone has a different, there's children involved. There's a great dad. Even though he's reluctant, he's a great dad. And because he's a great dad, and maybe the woman is working so hard, there's someone to go to parents-teachers consultation. There's somebody to come home. There's somebody at home when the kids come home. He's a supportive father. There's someone, and there's someone like that. Unfortunately, there are women also who have no self-worth, who for them, this is the only man who will love me. This is the only man I can have. So as a result, I will take his nonsense and I will look after him. So as you hear some women say, and it bugs me to no end, oh, he is my firstborn. No, he's not. Your husband is not supposed to be your firstborn. It's even the fact that you're thinking about him as your firstborn. For me, that just bugs me. But also, it is, what is your self-worth? Should you leave a man because he doesn't have money? And I will say to you, never. I have a daughter who's 32. I would never tell her, look for a man with money. For me, it's look for a partner who will support you. And there are some men who are not reluctant. And as Sally has clarified, it is that reluctant man. It is that man who does not want to work. That man who's using your networks. And I know this man. I know this man. I know them because they live amongst us. And I like what you say. They're our brothers. They are our relatives, they are our friends, reluctant men who just want to take and take and take. Unfortunately, these men, as they take and take and take, what they do, apart from they corrode your self-worth as well. The more you're giving him, the more you hate him, or just actually hate the fact that you have to give him money. But then there's some wonderful men who have no money, but are fantastic partners. They support you. They come to the table. If you are to ask this person, what is he bringing? He'll tell you what he's bringing to the table. He's not bringing the cash because God has blessed you, woman, to be the one with the cash, with the one with a good job, the one running a good business. But what God has done with this man, he's still also taking his head of the home because he takes his role seriously as husband, supports you as a husband. He's a good husband and he's a good father. And a good, whoever he is, his family, he's good to his family as well because he's taken what God has given him as head of the home seriously. So I'm not talking about that man. So women take this, it's for everyone, it's different. And that's my answer to this one. I can't tell you there's one answer to it, but women take it because of different reasons.
Thank you, Rose.
Thank you.
So Rose, did you actually tell us what was your reason for this?
Yes, I did. So no, this guy, okay, other than the fact that he was handsome.
Okay, there we go.
If my daughter is listening, she'll just tell me, Mommy, that's not deep. But anyway,
you liked him.
I told you one thing. He knew about his 4 children. He knew each one of them, and he knew them and knew them. Just didn't, they were not his kids. He knew each one of them. That for me was precious. That for me was precious. Secondly, I'll give you just one example. There were many examples. We went for, we had a lunch. I was hosting a lunch one time, and this person had cooked French beans. The ones the Kikuyus call meshiris, the French beans. The Kambas don't have them. They don't have beans. So I can't even tell you what they're called in Kamba. But because Kambas don't eat meshiris. So anyway, they don't grow meshiris. So I don't like them. And as I'm talking to the person I'm sitting next to, this man is removing the meshiris on my plate. He's actually removing them. He's putting them aside. He's like, I mean, I'm not even paying attention to him. But my friend I was sitting next to is watching him, removing the meshiris because I don't like them. So for me, it is those things. It's the emotional support he gave me. It's the emotional support. My kids were in boarding school, and you'd ask me how the kids doing. And even when he met them, they also they liked him because he was a caring dad. He was a caring man. So he cared for me. He emotionally. The reason I was with him because he emotionally supported me. He emotionally supported me. However, I couldn't keep him when the time came. But
So
he
Rose,
was very supportive.
yes, that's good. So far, so good. Thank you so much. But my question is, Rose, so what is it that made, you've explained it very well, there were those aspects that you personally felt was so good about him that you kept him, despite the fact that he was reluctant in terms of breadwinning, or supporting financially. So what are you telling the women? Are you saying, did you eventually then leave because of that aspect of him being a reluctant breadwinner?
Oh, immediately.
The emotional support no longer became enough.
No, it wasn't enough. Yes,
you're admitting that.
I mentioned it. I mentioned it when he said, I don't want to work for nobody.
That's when you knew.
That was the end of the, believe it or not, the following day. The following day, I left him. I prayed and I told God, thank you for bringing this man along the journey. However, I am not willing to keep a man. I left him the following day because I know what my self-worth is. I value myself enough to know that I am not going to keep a man.
Thank you, Rose. So I gather a couple of things from what you said. Thank you so much, Rose. I know you as one who calls a spade, you speak it as it is. And that's what we need at this stage in our lives. We need to be open and candid and actually confront issues without tiptoeing around them. I noted one of the other characteristics you brought in about this kind of character is he doesn't want accountability, submission, and authority. Because the fact that he doesn't want to work for nobody, that shows me already he doesn't want to be given instructions, told what to do, and accountable to somebody. You know, when we work for people, we're accountable to them. We are submitted to those people we work for, and and there's authority aspect. So there's that weakness there, an inability to submit to authority or be accountable. He just wants to. Then the borrowing of money, because that's what brings it in. The minute you're not being able to take care of yourself, you end up borrowing, and because you don't have a steady source of income, you're not paying back. So I'm pointing the negatives that come with this kind of a characteristic, that ultimately he'll be known as one who borrows and doesn't pay back. And in this case, he was borrowing from you and he was not paying back.
Right.
And then the other thing is, I like what you said about Karen, because I just want to unpack it for our listeners. Karen is the affluent part of Nairobi. So when you talk of Karen, you're symbolizing a place of wealth, a place of beyond and above sufficiency. You lived well, but you chose peace. And you chose your peace and life. I like that, because I think there are many women who do that, who or maybe some who don't, who maybe they need to hear that narrative, that there are times when the resources, no matter how much, no matter how many cars you're driving, how many designers you're wearing, how comfortable you are financially, there's something, you come to a place of saying, no, this is not peace, this is not life, this is not who I want to be. You know, taken care of to the point where but there isn't peace about it. There isn't a self-worth or a self-esteem. And we'll come back to that later when we talk about the woman who wants to be kept because of the luxury and feels entitled to be looked after by a man. So I see Betty, you're on. Betty has come on. So Betty, welcome. And I'm going to come straight to you, and I'm going to ask you to just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do. And as soon as you do that, then you're going to answer this question for me, Betty. And this is the question for me. You're going to tell us, can a marriage survive where a woman is the main or only breadwinner? Can a marriage survive where the woman is the main or only breadwinner? What problems do you foresee arising, and how would you advise women to handle that situation? Welcome, Reverend Betty.
Thank you very much, Sally. I'm glad to be here. Hi, Rose. Hi, Robert. My people, I have a lot of people on here. I am a life coach and executive coach. I run a company called Inspired Insights Africa Limited. We help people and organizations to unleash the giants within through our transformational programs. It's a job that is aligned with my life purpose, and therefore it gives me a lot of fulfillment. So to be here today is a joy, because I'm sure as we are speaking, we're transforming a life somewhere. Right. I'm also the founder of the Women of Valor movement, a movement that's helping women to take up their God-given role and purpose to not only help themselves, but help the men in their lives, men, sons, men, husbands, men, brothers, men, fathers, because as women, we have a great role and a great purpose in the lives of the men in our lives. So enough of that. I'm a mother of four, married to one man, Josiah Ochieng. Shout out to him. I'm sure he's watching somewhere. So today, I'm glad to be here, and I want to just go right straight into the question. Can a marriage survive when the wife or the woman is the one who's the sole breadwinner or the one who's earning more? The short answer to that is yes. But there are challenges, and the challenge emanates from one place. And the place that it emanates from, those who've come to the Women of Valor movement know that men have a need. And the number one most important need for a man is the need for admiration of their masculinity. And that's got something to do with their ego. And that place called the ego is the place that starts to bring the challenge, because this ego's got something to do with their God-given divine role of a protector and a provider. So when a woman is getting more, already it predispositions the relationship to be going against the grain as regards to the admiration of the man's masculinity. And therefore, in many ways, it is threatening it. And in many ways, you are at a risk of injuring that one most important need in a man. So when I say a need, not the difference. It's not a want, it's a need. They are built with an insatiable need for admiration of their masculinity. And that is how you fill their love cup. Then they are able to give you whatever you need as a wife. So therefore, this woman who's getting more and therefore becoming the provider is already tilting the game equation for the man. And remember, the man is in this to win. So already they're at a loss because you are providing. Now, the truth is, they will begin to resent the fact or detest the fact that you are providing. And further, they will resent you, not out of volition or out of want, but out of their innate building, just how they were created and wired as men. So this now becomes a problem because there is the masculinity, there's the ego that you've got to navigate even as you provide as the wife. So that becomes the number one most important challenge. So what do you then do? What you do then is to give and provide from a place of submission. Now it becomes a very delicate balance when you are the one providing and yet got to submit. And yet there is no other way of succeeding or going around this unless you are able to navigate and still be able to provide while at the same time submitting. So how you do that becomes a whole science. I'm not I'm not sure I can be able to delve into it right now. I think it's a book in the whole of itself. But if you read my book, My Encounter with Faith, you begin to see how the understanding of the spiritual violation that you can make when you have been charged and honored with such a responsibility becomes a very paramount thing to look at. Because this man, if you violate him because you are providing, you begin to get into dingy areas of spiritual violation, which then begins to impact not only you, but your children and your children's children. So as a woman and as a wife, then it becomes very important for you to have the understanding that even when he does not provide, does not negate his responsibility to be the leader in the ordination and the ordinance of God, that he is still the leader. He's supposed to be the provider and the protector. So how do you allow that to happen in the precinct of the materiality that you have been blessed with? Yeah. So I hope I have been able to answer the challenge and the fact that, yes, it's possible for the marriage to thrive, but it will only thrive if the wife is careful about this particular aspect of the ego and the admiration of the masculinity. Because if you injure a man's masculinity because you're providing more or because you are the sole provider, you've killed him. A man whose masculinity have been injured has got no manhood to put on the table or in the bed for you as the wife. So I'm sure we are addressing adults here, and I can nobly say that you need the man's masculinity to be intact. You need his manhood to be intact, even when you are providing. So you've just got to know that that's a place of care and a place that you must handle with a lot of wisdom. And you're coming in to provide. You must provide as number two, not as equal, because you will never be equal to that man, not as being number one. So in your mannerism, in your talking, in your influencing, in your engaging, and in your providence, you must still come from that place. Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Reverend Betty. I can hear my women, I can hear women screaming because they want to ask you this. You've approached it as if the man's failure to provide was out of, or maybe he's unwell, he's sick or unable. I want you to look at it where he refuses, where he can provide, he's able, full-bodied and healthy, but chooses, because you've counseled the women very well how to be submissive and handle it well, don't injure his ego, and that is perfect. Where he is unable for whatever reason, the jobs are not coming through, the contracts are not coming through, and for some reason you can't blame him, okay? But I'm talking of a place where he is able to provide. He could go out there and work. He could go out there and get the contracts, but he has decided no, he just wants to sit at home and read the newspaper and watch the movies and wait for you to provide. What would you tell that other woman who is facing that situation?
Thank you, Sally. Thank you very much. And for bringing me right onto the spot of the heat of the seat. And I can feel it, but I am equal to the task in this sense. When I have said there is a spiritual violation that you must guard as a woman, because this pillar can impact your life, the life of your children, and the life of your children's children. So I'm talking about a generational imperatives here. Now, when a man refuses to provide, there are two things I'd like to speak about. First is why he refuses to provide. And that can be because of his upbringing. Maybe there were gaps in there in terms of his own masculinity having been injured from that place, the issue of unequal and qualified acceptance. He's not being allowed to lead in many ways. So all these things can be contributors for why he's not able to provide. Now, you as a wife can do something to help him be able to provide. And the number one thing is to give him the unequal and qualified acceptance. He's providing, his ambition, his lack of ambition, his drinking, his lack of drinking, his lack of being there in the way that you want him to be. You are safer with him and you providing, but with you not injuring that one area that I'm talking about. Now, secondly, is for you to know that this man who's not providing is none of your business. The man does not report to you. He reports up there to God in terms of ordinance. So when I know that he does not report to me, I obligate myself of responsibility. What do I then do? I ask God to provide for me where he has deliberately refused to provide, because he's been given that responsibility by God. He refuses to provide. He doesn't report to me. I ask God to provide through me. Now, when he provides through me, I must always remember I am not the source. So even when I am the one providing, I must be humble and have humility because I am not my source. Now that begins to make me walk and be able to help my children to survive this turmoil and this storm and be able to be careful about this spiritual pillar that we must be careful about. Because men, when it comes to push and shove, a lot of the things in my life and the life of my children depends on this man. However, if he deliberately refuses to choose, God will provide through me. But when he provides through me, humility is the key. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Reverend Betty. And I deliberately pushed you to answer that because I've heard you. The reason I invited you to this webinar, because you and I were guest speakers at a conference. And I heard you speak like this, and I knew I needed to bring you to my women so they can hear what you're saying. I at some level, I get you. And I know, and as you said earlier, unpacking what you've just told us, and this, you've spoken to the woman of God, the born-again woman. You know, you've actually spoken to the born-again woman. And yet we have an audience of women who are not born again on this panel. So I get you in terms of the born-again woman. She's getting you in terms of the God-given role, in terms of that the man it is to God that he must answer, not to me as the born-again wife. And I like what you qualified earlier, that unpacking this conversation you're having here, this explaining to a woman in that situation what you is a seminar. You need to sit one-on-one with any woman going through that. And what we do in these conversations, we provide your contacts. We provide contacts of our panelists with their permission, because I know there are women today listening, or those who will go and tell their sisters, who want to sit with you, Reverend Betty. When I first heard you bring this forward, I said, I must invite you, because I know there are many women who need to hear what you're saying from that perspective, and how they can win and have victory despite that circumstance if they follow what you're saying. But I know it's going to take one-on-one counseling, a process. It's not something you can say in a webinar like that and I wake up tomorrow and I practice it. It will need more than that. But I thank you. I thank you so much for doing that. We're still left now with a woman who is not necessarily born again. So this idea of your husband being accountable to God, she doesn't know what we're talking about. And that's another level now. That's another level now that is a challenge. But thank you for answering that and for speaking it as it is. It will help many, many born-again wives. It will, because you brought an angle which they had not explored and they had not tested. And they'll be surprised at how miraculously victorious they can get if they apply that principle. Sounds so ridiculous right now, but it has its merits. Yeah, it has its merits. Yeah. So let's move on. I'll come back to you, Reverend Betty, later on. But let's move on, because I see that Coach Robert, you're there. Coach Robert is on. So I'm going to go straight to Coach Robert and ask him the following question. As you come on, Coach Robert, please just tell us what you do, who you are, and then you go straight into your question. Do you think that a reluctant breadwinner, or a serial deal chaser? Now, let me go back, because Robert, you've just come in, where I was unpacking from my book that what I've written in my book about this kind of man. I've talked of the man who refuses to work, who refuses to apply himself, who refuses to contribute to the financial welfare of the courtship or the marriage, and wants to be taken care of by the wife completely, and has no problem and no apology about it, and is very comfortable about it. Now, so my question to you, Robert, is this: do you think that such a person, such a man, a reluctant breadwinner, or the one I call a serial deal chaser, because he's always chasing some deal or other, because he doesn't want a permanent job, which way he has to sweat, is he just simply lazy, or is he just a crafty freeloader? Has he connived and schemed? I'm gonna marry this woman, she looks settled, she looks economically stable, and I'll use her. Is he crafty, or is he just lazy, a lazy spirit? Or is he a victim of some kind of socialization, environment, or genetic makeup? And I think Reverend Betty was about to mention that, but I want you to go into detail on that, Robert. Welcome, Coach Robert.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. If you can hear me, just give me a quick wave. So I'm sure everybody can hear me. Fantastic. My apologies for coming in a bit late. I had to do some things at my daughter's school, but I'm here. Now, in fact, I don't think we should be calling them men. We should be calling them boys growing in age, but not in maturity. If you have been blessed that you can financially take care of your family, you have full body functions that you can go out there and work, and then you decide just to sit and ask for the remote control to watch football. In fact, let me tell you something, Madam Sally. Some of these boys, I call them boys, are very active in the bedroom. They don't want to do anything. But when their wives come back home in the evening and they have worked so hard, they just want to go to the bedroom. One thing is a bit of both. There is how they were raised. How they were raised. What did they see their father doing? Because a battle that a man does not finish, his son has to pick it up. So it is, what did he see his father doing? There are some men who are very broken and lazy. You cannot be a lazy man and raise a very strong son, because you cannot take in apple juice and burp out mango juice. What you take in is what you'll burp out. So young men largely do the things they saw their fathers do when they were young. You understand? Some are just absolutely lazy. And when you're dealing with a lazy man, and I want every woman to hear this, when you're dealing with a lazy man who has just refused to put in an effort, please look at 6 or 5 of his closest friends. 3 of them are exactly like that man. You know, they want to go drinking, they want to have nyama choma, they just want to do that. But when it comes to Monday morning, they don't want to work. Now, there's a kind of man who really, Madam Sally, wants to really get things sorted. But he is at a season where things are just not opening up. That's a man who is just at a tough season, but sooner or later, things will open up. But let me tell you the truth of the matter. We have some men who have white beard. Okay, mine is silver beard like mine. And all they want to do is just sit at home and let the wives do everything. And when the wife come home, you just want to order your wife around. You want to tell the mama nyagodie, okay, let's go upstairs. You just want bed gymnastics. Even this woman is tired. So what we need is to get men to challenge each other. Listen, a woman's grace, by the way, she can step in, but the genetic and the spiritual makeup of a woman is to be a helpmate. A woman will not help a parked car. You understand? What is your garden? So some men have not discovered their garden, or they have discovered their garden, they have just refused to till their garden, and then you look at your woman, and then you're telling your woman, please help me till the garden. So some are crafty, they just want to enjoy, to eat, to go on holiday, to travel the world, but they don't want to go out there and put in their work. And then they are very good at trying to make babies. Let me tell you, I would rather a man who is a champion in the boardroom than in the bedroom. But it is so disappointing that a woman has gone out there and worked hard, and then you want to break her back in the bedroom. Really? She's doing the homework with the children. She's trying to do the business to get everything together. The mortgage is being paid. The rent is being paid. And you're there just watching football, Manchester United, saying the way we have bought a player. You and who? Did you contribute to that buying of that player? So we just need to get to a place where also ladies need to understand there is a difference between a man being in a tough season and a man just refusing to put in an effort. You understand? You can't be there for too long. You just can't be there trying to say, oh, I think it will come up, it will come up, it will come up. Well, ladies, please, I know, Madam Sally, and I know, and I've talked to many ladies and many gentlemen, and I'll tell you where the problem is. For the ladies, they feel there are no men out there, that I'd rather just settle with this guy who is not showing a lot of promise, but I'd rather just have a man. So that lie that ladies have bought, especially the Christian lady, that, you know, there are no men out there, so let me just settle for this one, you know. You cannot be a queen and then get somebody who's behaving like a warthog. So you've got to be a queen and get a man who is a king, so the grace of a queen will activate the kingly anointing and upward mobility is inevitable. So yes, look at how they grew up. Always look for the boy child, please. Look, asking questions about his father. Asking questions about his father, his relationship with his father, how his father was. And then look at his close friends, look at his spirituality, look at the authorities over him, because you can never be a person of authority if you're not a person under authority. Is he submitting on shaky ground? And let me tell you, if you can look at all those things, then you'll see where the problem is. But do not be desperate, lady. There is a difference between a man going through a season and a man who has just refused to leave the season of laziness.
Amen. Thank you, Robert. Well put. Well put. So I like that you've also pointed out that there are those women who actually settle for that situation out of just sheer desperation, feeling that they've looked around and they haven't seen anyone better, so they settle for it. And especially a woman who's already doing well financially. Robert, do you think there are times when some women may say, I'm already making enough? You're making enough money. It's not taking anything away from me. The money I am making is enough for both of us. It's enough for the children. We're not deficit. There's no deficit. We're not lacking. And at least I have a man. At least I am Mrs. So-and-so and I have a man in the home. So maybe she settles out of that kind of rationale, you know, sort of like, so what's a big deal? See, I'm making enough money for all of us. Then why am I insisting he should also make money if everything else is okay? He's a good father. He's a good husband. He doesn't beat me. He doesn't mishandle me. He respects me. So what do you think? What would you tell a woman who comes with that argument to you, Robert?
First, I'll tell them to go and get their head checked. I'll tell you why I'm saying that. Number one, men love projects. That is why when you call for a man's meeting, they'll ask you, what is the end game? Where are we going? What are we targeting? There's something about a man that he's a hunter, that he wants to be the one to keep on hunting, like a lion. I love watching the National Geographic. If a gazelle comes and gives itself to a lion, or a lioness, it's like, no, I don't think I want to appreciate this news. But if I go out there, men, sometimes, by the way, you may lose a man when you don't allow him to flourish as the hunter, as the provider. And remember, there is a season. I still talked about that season that a man is going through issues. But when you feel that now this man can go out there and is ready, even if you're earning 1 million shillings, let him bring the 100 shillings and let that 100 shillings buy milk and bread that day, and let him feel that he is the man. You may be a CEO, the man may be a watchman earning 1,000 shillings. Say, Baba boy, hiyo 1,000 umetupatia, tumenunua sukari, tumenunua maziwa. The guy's chest will come forth and walk as if he's the best thing since sliced bread. He will walk, I'm telling you, he will walk like a king. He will walk like a king, sit like a king, treat you like a queen, and he will go out there and conquer more. That is why they say the woman is the neck and the man is the head. I will see where we are going. I will hear where God is telling us to go. I will prophesy where we want us to go. But you as the neck, you will decide where I will turn. Let the man be the king. He may be an academic dwarf. He may be a financial dwarf. but whatever he brings, let the king arise.
Amen, amen. I think you and Reverend Betty can make a very good team. While she works on the women, you will work on the men. And when those men and women meet, there'll be beautiful, beautiful relationships. Thank you so much, Coach Robert. Thank you so much. I'll come back to you, Coach Robert, in a short while.
Okay.
Let me go straight now. I note that our Rosemary Carlos is not yet. She wasn't actually traveling all the way from Swaziland. It is virtual. I hope she did catch a flight to try and get here. But I hope she joins us before the end. But let me go straight to Robert Mbugua. Let me go to Robert Mbugua. Robert, Karibu, please introduce yourself, what you do, and then quickly go into your question, your first question, which is, what does the word of God address marital provision? And if so, what does it say? Welcome, Robert.
Thank you so much, Sally. By way of introduction, I think my biggest claim to fame is I'm Sally's cousin.
Yes.
She's my older cousin. We all aspired to be like her. She was a brilliant cousin. She set the bar very high for all the other cousins. So Sally is my cousin. She's a lawyer. I'm an accountant. I spent many years at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I was one of their partners in Johannesburg. I was a director of Standard Bank. I'm the chairman of British Oxygen. So yeah, so basically I'm in the corporate world. But Sally asked me to make a comment on whether the word of God says anything about provision. Now, what the Bible says is work is honorable. Work is actually God's idea. Now, when we study the Bible, there's a principle known as the law of first mention, which says, it actually lays a lot of emphasis to the first time we find a concept within the Bible. And in Genesis chapter 1, you actually find God saying, in the beginning, God created. So right at the beginning, God was working. When you get to Genesis 2, you find God putting man in the garden and telling him to work, work the land, do something about that land. And when he does get a wife, the wife is told, now you come and help your husband, who's actually got some work to do in the garden. So when we get specifically to the issue of marital provision, I thought I'll just pick up two verses in the Bible and just leave it at that. The first one is 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8. Which says, anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than unbeliever. It's very hard to be worse than unbeliever, but if you can't provide for your immediate family, then the Bible says you're worse than unbeliever. And I just thought in the words of a previous president, that man is bure kabisa, right? If you refuse to provide, you're worse than unbeliever. You're bure kabisa. But the second thought is Ephesians 5:25, where Paul says, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Now, we then have to say, how did Jesus love the church? And I listened carefully when Sally started speaking. I think she talked about 7 P's. It was always brighter than most of us, so I can't get to 7. But I think there are 3 P's we can think of in Jesus loving his bride, the church. Yes. Jesus provided for his bride, Jesus protects his bride, and Jesus prays for his bride, right? So in terms of providing, if you want to be like Jesus, which is really the direction I think the Bible talks to us about, or the standard it sets, at least you must provide for your family. You at least must aspire. You might not do it perfectly, but at least you should aspire. So my whole reading of the Bible basically tells me not providing makes you worse than an unbeliever. And if you are to be like Jesus, where we're told husbands love your wives, wives are told to do a number of things, but principally husbands love your wives. In which way? In the way Jesus did it. Jesus didn't just keep saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. Jesus provided for his bride, the church. And we ought to provide for our brides and our families. So that's really as much as I would say about the biblical context of this. Thank you so much, Ali.
Good. Now, Robert, let me push you a bit to maybe what would have been your second question and ask you, when is it okay for a wife not to work at all? She's educated, she has her qualifications, her skills, talents, and everything. when is it okay within a couple where it's okay for her not to work? What's the difference at that point between a stay-home wife and a soap opera diva? Let me tell you who a soap opera diva is. A soap opera diva in my book, in the chapter in my book we're discussing, is the woman who marries a man with money. She targets that specifically. She says to herself, I'm not gonna lift a finger. I'm going to marry a man with means so that the minute I marry him, I'm gonna sit back, enjoy my life, watch all the soap operas, go to the mall, paint my fingers, have workers in the house, drive as many cars, wear as much designer clothes, and I will not work. It is she feels entitled that this man should take care of her. Whether or not, even some situations is whether or not he's wealthy or not, whether or not he's super wealthy or he's just normal, she feels he should take care of her. She has taken the provision aspect to another level. So Robert, but how do you differentiate between that woman and another kind of woman who actually chooses to stay at home and not work?
Okay, thank you so much, Sally. The short answer is the only time it's okay for a woman, and I guess for that matter for a man, not to work is if they are sick or incapacitated, right? There's no other reason. On a short-term basis, and the other Robert mentioned it, if you lose a job, then you can't work, but you should be actively looking for a job. But there's no room for reluctant husbands, or reluctant wives, or people who just say, I just stay at home. Now, having said that, it's important to distinguish the work we do and the location of our work, right? And I think COVID has made that distinction much easier to explain. So 2 years ago, when you said you're going to work, it was synonymous with I'm going to the office. For the last 1 year, I've hardly gone to the office, but I still work. In fact, I probably work harder than I used to. Stay-at-home moms can be some of the most hardworking people, and they deserve to be recognized. Soap opera divas, as you've defined them, are lazy and should be shunned as much as we should shun lazy men. Now, on the question of when it's okay for a wife to be a stay-at-home mom, so it's not a question of she not working, it's actually her working from a different location. Her office just happens to be in the home. I would say it's okay for her to do that when the couple agrees upon it. It's a major decision, and the couple has to agree upon it. They have to consider numerous factors. For example, they have to decide, can they survive on one salary, right? Are they prepared to lower their cost of living? Perhaps they have a special needs child, and the couple can mutually agree to sacrifice financially in order for the wife to stay at home and help the child. In this case, the mother might be working even harder than the husband, just that her location is in the house. So I think every couple must evaluate and make a decision that best suits their circumstances. Now, I'll give you an example. In my case, my wife and I got married 26 years ago. And at that time, both of us were working. A couple of years later, I got a job to move to South Africa. And we decided to go together as a family. We believed in being together. So we went there, and we spent more than 10 years in South Africa. And my wife was a stay-at-home mom, right? My wife is well educated. She actually did better than I did in high school. She's got an MBA. So we're not talking about a stupid lady. We're talking about well-educated lady who can basically choose and agree to stay at home and bring up our children. And I think that's one of the best decisions we ever made. She brought up our 2 daughters. She built our house into a home. And interestingly, as I thought about this, yesterday was actually our younger daughter's graduation. And she graduated from a top American university, right? So if you're giving awards for people who've got something to celebrate, I think send it to me. Right?
Yeah, okay.
So our daughter graduated yesterday, their graduation is from a top American university. Now, she won a scholarship that allowed her to go to a school that we would never have afforded. Could it be that as a homemaker, my wife actually ended up paying our daughter's school fees, right? Because what she spent her time doing, not being a diva, but literally putting so much into those girls, ends up in scholarships and all. So basically, that's really, I think, what I would say about stay at home. So they're working. So men not working, that's not acceptable. But I think the conversation is about the location of our work and the nature of our work. That's a different. Yeah.
Very
Thanks.
good.
Yeah.
Excellent, Robert. And my challenge to you panelists, all of you, even Rose, who may say she's not a preacher of the gospel or minister, I think it's upon us when couples come to us, when they're in courtship, to help them address the financial issue. I like what Robert is saying, what a couple agrees, because what they agree in advance is crucial. How are we going to handle this? What are we going to handle seasons when the man can't get a job, if he's not able to get contracts or whatever? How are we going to handle that situation? Is there a time that might come that the wife might stay at home or the man might stay at home? I think these are very important factors for premarital counseling, or even with girlfriends and daughters, like Rose has a daughter, to talk to the girls, to talk to the men, and make sure they're addressing these issues way before they get into the marriage, in order to ask themselves, to see the reality of the situation, not wait until they get into the marriage. So let's move on very quickly, because I want us to come to a place where we have a question time, a question and answer time. Unfortunately, Rosemary Carlos is still not with us. So I'm going to go back to Rose Musau. Rose, I'm going to ask you another question. You did excellent in the first one. And your second question is, how would you advise mothers with sons? You know, you and I have sons, and we have many friends who have sons who are of marriable age now. Amefika pahali now, they're almost bringing us girls home to marry. Yeah? How would you advise us to ensure that our sons do not become kept men, that they arise to their God-ordained duty as providers in the home?
Okay, thank you, Sally. Thank you, Sally. And we're back to that. I like what you described, how you said men who are allergic to work. So we're not talking about men who've had, misfortunes and maybe have lost their jobs, during COVID or any other time. So when I saw the question, when you sent it to me, I smiled because, and I'm happy to share this, I am truly blessed. Yes. My son has been in the business, my business, the one that I founded 25 years ago. So my son now runs it. Amen. He's 28. And, he's chatting with me even as I'm on this panel. I'm one of those blessed women. I'm completely blessed. My son is amazing. He's an amazing guy. And if there are any young, beautiful women out there, he's available. Yes. He's given me permission to look for a wife for him. So, and he's wonderful. He's hardworking. And I must say, I wish I could stand here and say, I wish I could be sitting here saying, oh, I am an amazing mom. I did the right thing. I know that I have been intentional. I was intentional raising my children. I was very, very intentional. And then, I must say that as a single woman, I was married and then divorced. So from the time he was 11, I left their dad. And so I am single. However, and until today, I thank God for my father-in-law, who is now late. May he rest in peace. He stepped in. He stepped in and took responsibility and supported me. And I didn't raise my son by myself. He was part of my village. However, I was intentional. And I must tell you, I was intentional. He was the usual thing. He was naughty. He was so naughty. I still cannot believe how naughty he was, but he turned out to be so responsible. And one of the things, and he gave me permission to give this story, is when he was in high school, and I know Robert mentioned Manu. My son is a diehard Manu fan. We are all Manu fans. We stick kufa na kupona. When things are thick, he's unhappy, we are all unhappy, because man is not happy when Manu is not on the winning side, and they haven't been for a while. At least this season, they are back to second. They're going to be on top soon. So I remember when I was in high school, one time walking in, and my help was carrying my new juice glass and popcorn, and I passed her in the corridor and I told her, "Unapelekea boss?" So she smiled and said yes. And I thought to myself, oh my God, what am I doing? This is wrong. There's no way. This is not how I want my son to be served as he's watching football. That for me, I knew was not what I wanted. And I killed that story. I killed it so quickly, she never served him again. Not because of anything. She was there. I mean, she could have served him. I mean, it was fine. Because he also is not a spoiled guy where he sits and calls. But I just knew that part of him becoming a man who is responsible was not being served by my help. And I remember this sermon once in church where the pastor said, we are raising, as mothers, we are raising, or as parents, we are raising spouses. So whenever my son was naughty and I chappered him, I would tell him, I'm not going to have your wife bring you back home to me. I'm not going to have her bring you back. And he would always cry and tell me, Mommy, I promise she's not going to bring me back. I promise she's not going to bring me back.
Yes.
And it's from those things where you're intentional. It's making sure. When my son was 22, I don't want to say I kicked him out of home, but I helped them move out of home with his sister.
Yeah.
And why? He was just 22. He had just graduated. He was actually working on an internship. However, the reason I did that is I knew if he sits and settles down and is comfortable,
yes,
he's not going to move. He won't want to
right.
move out.
Yeah.
My daughter left kicking and screaming is because why did she have to move out? Why does she have to move out with him? Why is it that she has to be, why is it that I'm also kicking her out? However, fortunately, we had a nice sit down. My daughter is a very sensible, she's a very wise girl. Yeah. She very quickly knew what I was saying is because we need to have him become a responsible man.
That's right.
And I'm telling you, ladies, I can tell you hand over heart, I am blessed beyond. My son is responsible. He runs the office. I am able, I'm sort of semi-retired as a result. Yeah. I'm thankfully so, enjoying playing golf and just I have a really good life. I'm really thankful. And just by supporting him and by making sure our conversations were around good men don't do that. Good men behave like this. Good men, responsible men. Before they left my house, I sat down with him and told him, you know, your sister's career, I mean, you know, her work is so demanding. She will not have time to be paying bills. Pay her bills. Pay all her bills. Do not let her know about bills. Take out the rubbish. Actually, I don't even think I told him to take out the rubbish. I think he just knew. He knew because as he was growing up, when I got home, I would leave my things in the car. He would go pick them up. My son is one of those guys. And I tell you, that's the one thing I appreciate about him. He's not reluctant. If I call, even in those days, I'll call him to, you know, us mothers, go, please pick up my handbag. Come and bring my handbag. Come bring the remote. It's next to me, but I'll still call him to come.
Yeah.
He's never been even rude about it. Never been rude. Never said, why don't you pick it up yourself? You always picked up the shopping. But that is from training. Picking up shopping. Until today, I never carry things. My son is a total gentleman. He's a total gentleman. He will never go ahead of, he'll never walk ahead of me. He will, and not just me, even the girls in the office, the girls he works with. He's a total gentleman. And I'm so proud. And I have to tell you this, I have to say this to mothers, because I am a mother. Mothers, when you raise wonderful men, I'm telling you, you've given Kenyans that extra bit, because we must accept that the man is the one who builds the homes. A man will build a home. A man is the one, if he's a good man, his wife and his children are happy, if he's a good man. So I'm here today to say it has to be intentional. Let me tell you what, Sally, and we know those people, the guy, Kababa is over 30. Kababa is living in the guest house, in the guest wing. Kababa has been built the house on the side of the house. Kababa is marrying a woman and bringing her to the guest wing of his parents' home. And the parents are fine with it. I am sorry. How then do you expect your son to be the man in the home? Kababa is coming to eat in your home. Kababa's wife is being brought to eat in your home. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And for me, it was intentional.
Yes. So Rose, you've talked of the Kapapa, that's another suitor for another webinar. He's one of the characters in my book as well, the bearded baby, mommy's boy, the one that is raised where literally when he does get married, he brings his whole family to live off the parents, which is wrong. And we're going to discuss that later in another webinar. But thank you. Going back now to our today's character. You've raised the issue of good, solid, responsible mentorship, male figures in the lives of our sons, where there's an absentee father, where there's, like in your case, where you had already left their father. So you,
Yes.
you chose, or God somehow orchestrated your father-in-law, a responsible male figure, to step in and walk the journey with your son throughout. And he learned solid lessons from there. Secondly, I love the intentional. Parenting is never by design. It has to be intentional. You have to know what you're fighting, what you're cutting out, what you're imparting, and what you're uprooting from the child. I also like the fact that you've talked of we're raising our sons as spouses. You know, for years, society has raised girls to be wives, daughters to be good wives, but we hadn't actually focused on raising our sons to be good husbands. Because I have a lot of young girls who call me auntie, who say, but auntie, these men, these sons you're raising are so useless. You've raised us to be good wives, but when it comes to the boys, they're not stepping up. So I like that. We're raising spouses. And if you're mothers of daughters, then the more reason why you raise your sons intentionally. Because you also want another mother to raise her sons intentionally so that your daughter has a good spouse. So I like that. Thank you so much, Rose, for that. Now, moving on, Reverend Betty, I want to come to you, Reverend Betty, because I'm conscious of time. And I'm going to ask you another question. And this time I'm going to ask you, do you feel that it is important for every woman to work and earn, even where the man she has married is wealthy enough to take care of her and the children? Do you feel that there is that need for her to actually then go out there and use her degree, her PhD, her master's? Do you think it's important or it's not necessary? Especially where the man can afford to cover everything. Let's say she's not going to work because there's a lack of money. There is sufficient funds in the house. But do you think she should still work? And if so, why? We can't hear you, Reverend Betty. Unmute yourself, dear.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally. Madam Sally, that's a very good question you've asked. I think if you ask every mom, and this pandemic has actually taught mom that they love to be home than to be at work. So what I was gonna say is that working is an unnecessary pain where the man can and is providing. We were built to help. We were built to support our family, our children, and our greatest joy is when our families turn out right, when our home is okay and in order. So if you ask any working mom to dedicate a day to just be focused on their home, make sure it's clean, make sure meals are on time, all those things that are happening, and the children come home and find her, the husband come home and find her, I'm sure they will be trading the $1 million jobs for being with their family so that the family can be right and perfect. Having said that, however, because of possible unpredicted emergencies, it is advisable for the girl to have the how and wherewithal to zoom in and defend and also provide if necessary. So if all factors, the ideal scenario would be that we don't work. Let the man go out there, tap it out, and come back. Mr. Mbugua is a perfect example. He's talked quite gloriously about the wife. And I think when he was in Stanbic, I was in Stanbic at some place. But the thing here is, when you look at it, it is how we were built and how we are wired. We are wired to be homemakers. If we move away from that, we are less happier, even when we get something out of it called money. But the place where we are happiest is within our home and being that homemaker. But however, the girl must be versatile and have the flexibility to zoom in cases of emergencies. The husband has died, nobody plans for that. He's lost his job, nobody plans for that. He's got an injury, nobody plans for that. So we also should not work and be so vulnerable that even in cases of emergency, we suffer because the man can't be able to do this.
So I'm thinking of a situation, Reverend Betty, where the money is there, it's sufficient. And here's a woman who is skilled, educated, has everything. What if her desire to work is not necessarily for money, but it's for, number one, fulfillment. Another, okay, you take care of the family, yes. And there are those who can multitask. You can still take care of your children, the home, even when you have a job outside there, yeah? Because there are those who may feel, I can do both. I can still take care of my family and still go out and work. Not so much because there isn't enough money in the home, but for fulfillment, because either I've studied law or I've studied medicine or I'm skilled and I would like to impact society or my nation. Even if I will say at the end of the day, it's not, the primary reason is not money, but it is the impartation, for me to share my skills and my knowledge that God has obviously allowed me to have with beyond my family, beyond my husband, 2 kids and a dog, to go out there into society and be more impactful. And for where it is even I get fulfilled by knowing that I spent these 5 years studying law, and now I can go there and argue cases in court for the sake of those who may not have the benefit. So I want to believe that you have nothing against that you believe that there is room for that, Reverend Betty.
There is, certainly, Sally, there is room for that where a person makes that choice. But all I'm saying, innately within our wiring, the default position and the priority would be to be the greatest homemaker ever. Your degree is not lost because you will be able to advise somebody, a neighbor, a friend. You still be fulfilled. But if you feel you want to go out and work in the corporate world, certainly do that. I worked in Sudan at some point, and my girls were 10 and 12 at the time. But I felt that I needed to come back home to my regional role rather than going to the in-country role where there was big parks, the school fees was paid for, house was paid for. In fact, I was going to get a good mortgage paid out of it. But I took the opportunity to come back home and be with the kids. And I think that was the greatest decision I ever made. So there is a place. I'm a corporate woman. I've been there, worked for Coca-Cola, worked in the board of Nairobi Butler, Mount Kenya Butlers as a non-executive director, worked in the region, as regional director, HR. However, I still say no for a fact. That if all factors were held constant, I'm happiest being a homemaker.
We'll be home. Reverend Betty, I loved your testimony that the time it's in your book, yeah? Do you have a copy of your book that you can flash just for a minute? Did you carry it? Do you have it in front of you?
Not right where I'm sitting, but I can grab it before the next question.
Yes, and because you said, especially when you spoke your testimony in terms of how you handled the early years of your marriage, any challenges, how you being a corporate woman at the same time, I thought that was gold for every married woman. And I just thank God and I pray that all of that is in your book. I hope it's all in your book because I would love my women to read that. Yeah. So let me ask you your last question, which will also be your punchline. Give me three reasons, 3 things you would advise a couple, pre-marital counseling. What 3 things would you tell a couple about finances? 3 things.
Very short. First, the starting remark is money and finances is the demonstrated relationship you have with God, who is your ultimate source. So anything that's happening there, it's because of that relationship. So if you are having a dwindling, there is a dwindling in your relationship. So what am I saying? Finances, you must align them with your core values first, so that you're working from abundance, not lack. You're working from love, not a chore. You're working from a spiritual responsibility, not a material focus. So number 1 is align your values first. As this couple that is coming together premaritally, you must be able to align your core values. Because if you're not aligned at a core value perspective, you will have a lot of fight. One person is coming from lack, money is not enough, it will never be enough, we must save, we must cut back. Another person is coming from its abundance. And remember, how you focus and bring yourself in life determines how much you get out of it or how much you receive from out of it. Number two, always be the giver. If the man is a giver and the wife is a giver, you will all come to a place where you are blessing each other. I mean, it becomes a very beautiful rhyme, if you like. The next thing, which is the third thing, is know your source. Never ever think that you are your source. You will be the one operating from a very little and low place if you think you are your source. Wow. And you will be hindering the flow of abundance that God already has for each and every individual upon the surface of this world. Yeah. So know your source and keep there. Yeah. Thank you so much, Reverend Betty. You can hear how much I want you to sit one-on-one with many women I know who need this kind of talk, and I'll organize that because this finances is one of the main reasons for divorce. I handle a lot of divorce in my profession. And apart from adultery, whatever else, finances, financial conflict in marriages, that's one of the highlights. It's almost becoming the number one reason why couples end up leaving each other, you know, when it comes to separation and divorce. That's why I believe it must be addressed from the very beginning at the place of marital, premarital counseling. So during courtship, the issues are very clear. I like the three solid reasons you've given, where a couple quite understands exactly what they're in for, how they'll address the issues when they come, because finances will rear their ugly heads in the marriage at one point or another, no matter how you look at it. So thank you so much for that. Now, let me go to Coach Robert. Coach Robert, I'm going to ask you this question, a loaded one, and then it will be your punchline until you come back to answer questions. So I'm more or less combining two questions into one. And number one, have you ever had a male figure, a male friend who was a kept man? What negative effects, if any, did you observe on him? You know, have you ever had a friend who was a man who was kept? What negative effects, if any, did you observe on him? And then secondly, Coach Robert, would you personally have a problem marrying a woman who decides not to work, even though she's able? She's well able, she's got the qualifications, the skills, education, but she simply feels that she's entitled and it is your duty to provide for her. So she's not gonna work. You're not necessarily wealthy, so she's not riding on the fact that you're wealthy, but just the fact that I'm the woman, you're the man, you take care of me, I'm not gonna work. Would you marry such a woman? And have you ever had a male friend who was kept, and what negative effects did you observe on him?
All right, thank you. Sorry, my internet is playing up, but I hope you can hear me. Can you?
Yeah, we can hear you, Coach Robert.
All right, two things. I have known a man who has been kept, and the man became lazy. The man his ambitions were done. He didn't want to wake up to fight and to go and conquer out there. Let me speak for myself, and I will say this. I once dated a president's daughter, not Kenyan. I once dated a president's daughter.
Be very clear, Robert.
Yes. Otherwise, CIDs will be outside my house.
Yeah.
I have once dated a president's daughter, and I'm telling you, yes, I enjoyed the bodyguards. We went to London, we went everywhere. But the truth of the matter, there is something in me that died. I mean, I want even to pay for fries. You can't pay because the moment you're trying to remove money, some assistant has already removed the money. We want to go to London for a party. Well, I was a party animal then, and I want to catch the train. No. Protocol does not allow that. Security does not allow that. So these big cars come and pick us, and I'm telling you, you'll enjoy it for a while. But after some time, you will even now loathe that woman. I started avoiding her because I wasn't being a man around her. I wanted to, in fact, I looked for a woman who was so poor, so deliberately. I mean, I wanted a very poor woman who was doing 2 jobs, night shift and class, because I wanted, when I buy the fries, you understand, I feel like, I've done something. The effect on a man is that you lose all sense of your manhood. You lose all sense of your ambition. You become lazy. You don't feel like you even have a say in the relationship. You want to say something. You remembered you went for a party in London. You were sitting in the back left of a limousine and it wasn't your car. You keep quiet. So you lose everything. You lose the zeal for the relationship. And I'll tell you one thing, Madam Sally. I started looking for arguments, fights, and quarrels that would get me out of the relationship.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
And then you hear these statements, oh, no, why are you going to work? I have everything. Don't you love me? I'm like, listen, I want to feel that I have worked and some money has come into my account. You understand? Would I want to marry a woman who is just sitting and saying it's my obligation, yet she is healthy, she can work? There's something Mr. Mbugua said it so well. If there is an agreement between a couple, like him and his wife when they went to South Africa for 10 years, but the wife did not say, you have gotten a job, you are the one who has brought her to South Africa, so because of that, you have to do. It was an agreement between 2 people. But the truth of the matter, as Robert Burale Wanguria, son of Apollo and Grace from Busia Mbuhalalire, if a woman tells me, oh, we know with the neck moving like this, with Brazilian weave, you're on Langata Road, but Brazilian weave is still in Mombasa Road, and you shake your neck and tell me, you have to take care of me because it is your duty as a man, I will answer, ulisikia wapi? I will say no, unless it's a mutual agreement. But when you feel that it's I'm an object, that you have to work like a machine, guess what? Born again, not born again. Educated, not educated. Because you think that, I will also now treat you like an object. When I come home at midnight, don't ask me where I am, because I'll tell you, I really have to work hard to take care of you. So the risk of that happening, if there's no agreement, is very high. So I want to tell people, unless, Mr. Robert Mbugua said it so well, unless there's an agreement. But also, anyway, he also said location. Some ladies or some men work so hard at home, but if it's just watching Alejandro, and then me, I have a 1-pack, and then you want me to also look like the Mexican guy, and me, I'm from Busia, where it's hard men, you understand? So then you start demanding some things for me. I will tell you, it was good while it lasted. I am a divorced man. My marriage lasted 1 year, 2 days. And when I look at the disagreements we had, finances were involved, as you've said. I know this too well. There was this and that. Now I'm glad I'm hearing things here that when I get married again, because I know I will get married again. Can I get an amen? I will understand some of these things, you will go into this. I've listened to Mr. Mbugua, married over 20 years. And I think one of the secrets to his marriage is there's an understanding, there is agreement, they decide what they will do as a family. You understand? So going forward, I also one day want to be in a panel and I say, I've been married 26 years and this is what we did. When I went to London for 10 years, we agreed with my wife. You understand? So it's communication. Don't just say, you're the woman, you have to do this. You are the man, you have to do this. The moment you objectify your spouse, they will objectify you and there is no relationship. So you will be like a black man in a dark room, winking at a black woman and expecting a reaction. Nothing will happen.
Amen. Amen. Robert, thank you, because I want the girls, young unmarried girls out there listening, to note, number one, that there's nothing very attractive about a woman who just wants to come and sit down and watch soap operas the whole day while the man goes to work. I think there's an element of respect that is lost along the way for that kind of, when she's not even applying herself in the home, like the stay-home wife, who is definitely contributing to the family. Now, the other thing is, when it comes to the man who is kept, you pointed out about the feeling of being emasculated. There's that sense of you've been emasculated, your ego. And Reverend Betty talked about this. It killed that eagle in you and abdicated your God-given role. And that's what brings to the resentment. Reverend Betty referred to the resentment. You've referred to it, and I've also written it in my book. That what happens when the man has abdicated his role of the provider, the God-ordained role, and the roles are reversed generally. and there's no good justifiable reason, what happens is over time, he begins to resent this woman. I've seen situations where the man begins to resent that she's providing, she's bringing home the bread and the bacon, and she's the one with positions, going to cocktails, and he goes to look for another woman who is not as empowered as his wife. He actually begins to cheat on his wife and begins to date a girl, like just like the way he went to look for a girl who was poorer than you. And he looks for a girl who is not empowered, who is not resourced, so that when he gives her 2K, yani go and get your Brazilian, okay, Brazilian wigs are more than that, go and buy yourself chips, she will really adore him. He begins to want that God-ordained role of a provider. So he walks out of his situation with an empowered woman where he's not playing his God-ordained role. He begins to resent that woman because he's feeling insecure, looks for a woman who is less money than him, who is now his match, and she worships him, of course, she looks up to him, and he begins to acquire that ego is restored and that he no longer feels emasculated. So it has a very negative effect when he's already in the earlier situation. Thank you for pointing out that. Let me go very quickly to Robert Mbugua. Robert, I want to bring you in your last two questions, combine them, and then you do a punchline. And this is my question to you is, how would you advise any of your daughters about marrying a reluctant breadwinner? I know you have 3 daughters. Were they 2, Robert? They are 3, yeah?
Two.
They are 2, yes. Now,
my wife is not my daughter.
So when they come to you, one of them comes and they say, Daddy, this is the guy I brought home to marry. And you are a wise man. You do your uchunguzi, due diligence, and you discover this is a typical reluctant breadwinner. He is a deal chaser. In fact, when he comes home, you ask him, so what do you do? Oh, there's this deal I'm chasing. There's this deal, deals that never materialize, but he has no permanent job, doesn't know how to apply himself. What would you advise your daughter? That's number 1. Number 2, this is before they marry. How would you advise her about that situation? Now, what if it so happened that you didn't detect it in advance and she ends up marrying him and it's in the middle of the marriage? And these tosoros don't reflect in the first couple of years. Down the line, you suddenly realize, oh my God, Shiro married a reluctant breadwinner. So how would you deal with those 2 situations before and in the marriage?
Okay, thank you so much, Sadly. And as you mentioned, my wife and I have 2 daughters, Judy, Wanjiru, and Joanne. Very simply, I would advise my daughters, either of them, that they have absolutely no business marrying such a man. It's a recipe for disaster. Now, there's a biblical basis, and then I'll add 1 or 2 comments. But the biblical basis, in 2 Thessalonians 3, verse 10, the Bible says, if a man will not work, he shall not eat. So I don't know how my daughter is going to live with somebody who does not eat, because if he's not going to work and he's not sick, then he has no business even eating, right? Proverbs 24 says, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come upon you like a robber and need like a bandit. What they would be inviting by getting people like this around themselves is basically just a disaster, right? So my advice to my daughters and to any young lady and their mothers of ladies on the call is to keep away from reluctant breadwinners, right? Now, the Jews have an interesting set of teachings that are carried from generation to generation. They have them in what we call the Talmud. And there's a passage in the Talmud, writings that explains literally what a Jewish father should do for his son after birth. And it is something along the lines, a father is obligated to do the following for his son. Number 1, to circumcise him, I guess when he's 8 days old, to teach him the Torah, that's their Bible, and to find a wife for him, and to teach him a trade. Others say, part of the Talmud, he's also supposed to teach his son how to swim as well, right? Now you think, why would the Talmud say that a father is required teach his son how to swim.
Yeah.
This is about going out there and teaching your son to be independent. You know, you can't swim on top of somebody else. You swim. You have to learn to swim for yourself. And Jews have a tradition that is so rich, you know, in terms of the way they look at things. So a father needs to teach his son how to stay afloat when things get rough. When things are tough, the father's responsibility is supposed to be teaching the son what to do. So what I'm telling my daughters, a reluctant breadwinner is not yours to train. Return to sender. You know, he needs to go back to his father, who will teach him the basics. And when he has learned these basics, then maybe he'll be man enough to come and look for a wife. I think the other Robert talked about, these are boys, these are not men. And I don't want my daughter to be married by a small boy. I want her to get a man to marry her. But until he's ready to work and to do something for his family, then basically he's still a boy, right? Yeah. So that's, I think, the focus of what I want to get onto, right?
Yes.
If they're already married, then it becomes complex. And I think one could almost have a whole workship around what to do, because God hates divorce.
Yes.
So divorce is the first thing. So what are the other things that you could do before, you know, in trying to unwind such a problem? But that would be quite a long answer. And I think in the interest of, you know, I think we better that face. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Robert. And you've said it right, that some of these issues that are rising, even some of the issues Reverend Betty has raised, are deep, and we wouldn't want to shortchange the audience by giving them quick, short, superficial answers, lest we mislead them. They need in-depth. And this is not the end of this season, Women Webinars. So in time, there will be time to address. And I'm actually writing down certain topics that I feel need to be addressed very deeply at a later stage. So thank you for that, Robert. Thank you so much for that. Now, I'm being told we need to go into a question and answer time, because there are some questions that have come up. Some questions that have come up that we need to address. So Kezi, you hear me, Kezi?
Madam.
Yes.
Yes,
Now
yes,
I know Rosemary Carlos is here, and my darling Rosemary, you are too valuable for me to put you in at the last minute with a short question, because I know there must have been a very good reason why you are delayed. So I'm going to make an executive decision and say, I will have you in my next webinar, because we want to hear everything. All the questions I had for you, you will need to answer them at some point. What I will ask you to do, Rosemary, is tell us about your book. I'm aware that you have recently published a book about loyalty in courtship. Very interesting title, Loyalty in Courtship. Can you please tell us about that book? What have you covered in it? Because this then whets the appetite of my audience, because they will say, oh, so she's coming back for the next webinar. We want to hear more about what her book says. So Rosemary, karibu. Unmute.
Oh, hi, Sally and the panelists. I'm happy to meet you live, and sorry for the technical hitch. Here is winter season.
Oh.
So it's winter season. So the weather is just on its own, but I thank God I'm able to connect live now. Talking of the new book I've launched, is a 1 month plus book. It's a book on marriage. And I think writing on this book, I've been in the marital counseling for over 10 years. And I discovered there's a lot that people don't know about marriage. They just know about wedding. And I keep on telling people what marriage is after wedding. So I think I saw that I explore it, I put it into writing. I discovered people don't know what courtship is. That's why they are courting, and then later they get to marriage, and then things are opposite now. And I discovered that I need to also tackle on hope for the singles. The singles, maybe they need to be prepared. They need to know that marriage is hard work. It's hardware, not software. It's a place that you are entering to work. You enter with all the tools to dig. And the best tool is the manual, the book, the Bible itself. So I want people to know the origin of marriage, which is God himself. So this book is not just a read, it's a book that is full of support of God's word. There's nothing I've written that has no scriptural support. So I discovered people are going through several stories, Sally. Am I still on?
You're still on, we can hear you. Is the book available in Nairobi?
The book is available in Nairobi. Maybe I'll give you the contact and then you'll forward it.
I'll post it to my audience. Yeah, I'll post it on my database.
Yes, it's in Nairobi and here in Swaziland in South Africa.
Very good. Rosemary, God's work all things. I'm amazed at how God works. I think you needed to come on a separate webinar for sure. After hearing now what you've just said, I'm like, I have no regrets that you are not able to come in earlier, because I think from what just the tidbits you've spoken, I need to have you on a separate webinar to unpack. Just now you've just given us such loaded statements that need to be unpacked one by one like for 2 hours, and so God is amazing. He works all things for good. So Pastor Rosemary, you are going to be my next guest on the next webinar. Your book is that's Reverend Betty's book. So you are going to be my guest on the next webinar on marriage. We're going to continue this conversation and with more than just what we've been talking about tonight, because I think our Kenyan women need what is in your book. We need to hear you more than that. And the reason I asked you where your book is, because many of the women here would like to read, or even the men would like to read the book before we come on, before we do the webinar. So you will let me know exactly where this book can be found in Nairobi or Amazon. Then I will circulate that to my database. And then by the time I set up the webinar for you to unpack what you've just told us in a few minutes, most of us will have read your book. Is that good, Pastor Rosemary?
Thank you so much.
God had a reason. Winter or no winter, winter cannot defeat God. There's nothing that, or any technical hitches. God cannot be defeated by that. But I think there was a reason. I'm just getting that revelation now that there was a reason why you couldn't make it before, so that I would have to have a separate webinar with you to unpack these things one by one, because we're coming to the end of this particular webinar. So good to see you, Pastor Rosemary, and I'm glad you've whet the appetite of my audience. We will be looking forward to that. So Kezi, do you have some burning questions before I do some close? Yes, tell me.
Sally, we will only take 1 or 2 questions because of time. And I want to throw at you this particular question. Yes. So you have a parent who is raising sons and is teaching their sons, how to be men and how to be spouses. But the sons don't have the example from the fathers. So for example, teaching the son, open the door, be a gentleman, but they don't see that role modeling from the fathers. So could you speak into that? And also, would you say something about a relative in their mid-30s? They have kids, but they don't want to work. So how do you handle a scenario where you have a relative? I think we can take those 2 questions and address them exclusively.
The first one was clear. The second one is about relatives who don't want to work.
Yes, you have a male relative in your circles. They have children, they're in their mid-30s, they are capable, but they absolutely do not want to work.
All right. Now, the first one to do with when sons do not have a father to guide them. They're an absentee father, whether by divorce or death or just not there. It's very straightforward. Rose already took us through this. Role models. Every single woman raising sons on her own must be cognizant of the fact that there needs to be role models who are men. Role models who are men. Uncles. Yeah?
Sorry, the father is alive. The father is alive, but his upbringing was different.
Okay,
so he doesn't model the same values.
Exactly. I would very wisely, and this is where Reverend Betty would come with her wisdom for women. I would very wisely, if I was in that situation, introduce male models into my sons without emasculating their father. Now I'm just throwing my own understanding here because I'm not in that situation. I have a wonderful husband who is a wonderful father. So if I was in that situation, I would probably, without emasculating my husband by showing him he's a useless father, find role models for my sons through the pastors in the church, or uncles or cousins or brothers. So I'd find, okay, I can see Reverend Betty and Rose Musau putting up their hands to tell me I'm answering wrong. Okay, Rose, you go first. Tell us the answer. Go ahead.
Oh,
then
man,
Reverend Betty will answer.
I'm almost getting in.
I know you are. I could see you.
Hey, you see how many times I put up my hand. So, and I also read the question actually, so I understand her. And also, I must tell you, a lot of, especially, we are, and I'm not saying all African men, but the majority of African men will not open doors, will not go ahead, but will not do all those things. However, to the mom who's probably just has a challenge with that, is even if the father doesn't, just call him and tell him, I like it when you do this. When you open the door for me, I feel so good. Make a big deal out of the fact that he's opened the door for you. Make a big deal out of the fact that he's let you go ahead of him. Just make a big deal out of it. All the things you want him to be that his father is not. Because it's not his father's fault. It's the way he's been raised.
Socialized,
Socialized. So it's the way he's socialized, it's the way he's been raised. So you tell him how it makes you feel as a mom and how it makes girls feel. Girls, women, depending on each stage, every stage is growing up. Tell him, you know, girls like this, girls like this, girls like it when you do this, girls like it when you do that. And I know that you will be able, especially because he loves you. He will.
So are you talking of you as the mom taking over the role of the father?
No, you're not. It's not. You know what, Sally? When you're raising kids, it's not. There's not. There is, yes, they will look up to their dad. However, his dad is not of opening doors. His dad is not of bringing flowers, most likely. But you tell him. You tell your son, because your sons love you.
Yeah.
If I tell my son, in fact, we have conversations all the time about what girls like. Girls like to be asked out. Girls like this. Girls like it. You tell him, mommy likes it when you open the door for her. Mommy likes it when you go ahead of let her pass.
Yes.
Mommy likes it when you carry the things from the car.
That's
or
right.
mommy likes it, even if you're in a matatu,
yeah,
he helps you carry things. Mommy likes it. You're not putting the dad down. You're talking about mommy liking it.
So what women would want, that's right.
Even flowers.
Yeah.
Even flowers, Sally. Tell mommy likes it when you bring me flowers on Mother's Day. Because you're not your husband's mother.
Yeah. So Reverend Betty, what would you say?
I want to just give, and thanks Rose for that twist, but I want to bring a little bit of a little additional twist to it. That we women, we make or break the men in our lives. Men sons, men husbands, men brothers, men cousins, male colleagues in our office. The male are always looking for the cues from the women. So you, the mother, how do you build your son and how do you break him? One of the ways is when you don't do 3 or 4 of these following things. One is if a boy gets an equal and qualified acceptance from the mother, that begins to become the fundamental building block for that boy. If he doesn't, he starts to become unstable. One of the things that he will do, he will go drinking, he will go drugging, and he will get into infidelity without a care to hide it. So the man is looking for the cue from the 2 most important women in his life, his mother and his wife. So if he gets it from the mother and doesn't get it from the wife, he will be leaning towards the mother more. If he gets it from the wife and doesn't get it from the mother will lose a son to the wife. An equal and qualified acceptance. The second thing that we as women destroy our sons with is when we don't give them the admiration of their masculinity. That includes when he has done something wrong, how do you correct him? When I correct him from a place of anger, I destroy him. In fact, I have come to realize I don't correct my son, the father does. If there is trouble, like he gets a big penalty because he's a businessman, gets a big penalty from the taxman, and he brings me in an envelope, I can take that envelope as a mother and say, my son will not suffer and I'll pay it for him. I have destroyed him and have lost an opportunity for him to feel like a man and to be fed in his masculinity. But if I fold that envelope back and give him and say, you're a man, you'll find a solution. He will find a solution, and out of that, he will have grown as a man. He will have grown in his masculinity. Now, mothers, when we babysit or we want to be nice to our sons to save them from the suffering, in that way, we are denying them the opportunity to grow in their masculinity and therefore to be celebrated once they have achieved it. And there are others, but I want to just talk about those two in the interest of time. So as mothers, we can build the sons, and the place that we build them the most is in the admiration of their masculinity and in the giving them an equal and qualified acceptance. The absence of that, drugging, drinking, infidelity, and also loss of drive to work or even to do things that are of importance goes away.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Betty. Now we are coming to the end of our time. It's 1 minute to 7. So I'm just going to ask, I know there are questions out there. What we normally do with our audience, because we never get time to finish all the questions, is I then, with your permission, panelists normally share your contacts, just email, not telephone number, just your emails, where the issue they've raised touches on what you answered on or what you are dealing with. And normally the audience is very clear. They will say, Coach Robert said this, Mr. Mbugua said this, or Reverend Betty. So we normally forward you the question. We forward you the issue. Sometimes they may want to come for counseling. If that's your area of if that's what you do. If you don't, then you may just need to answer the question and we send it back to them. So it's not all lost. But I want us to go into final 3 minutes where I get final words from each and every one of you panelists without going beyond. Let me ask Coach Robert on our topic, our conversation for today, the reluctant breadwinner, this man who refuses to work. Give me your last punch, give me your punchline.
Well, is to tell the ladies sometimes when you're in love, the red flags appear purple. Please do not ignore the red flags because they will come back to bite you a bit later. And if you found yourself in any situation, do not lose hope. There's always room to recover. Do not beat yourself down too hard, but also do not rush into a place because of desperation, because desperation is the doorway to making the wrong decisions. But I want to encourage somebody. Like me, I caught myself in a situation whereby I'm a divorced man. I almost let it get into me and I almost went into depression. Some of you are asking, how comes it's not working for me? How do I attract the wrong man? It is okay. Just hold on one more day. Tomorrow will be better. God bless you and thank you very much for this opportunity. I don't take it for granted, Madam Sally. It's a great, great honor even to listen to the other panelists and to every person who has listened to this broadcast. Please don't just take the information and run with it. Make decisions because applied knowledge is wisdom. God bless you all.
Amen. Mr. Mbugua, Robert?
Thank you, Sally. I think just two thoughts. One is work is honorable, right? And let's encourage our young people to work, whether it's women or men. Work is honorable. And work actually came even before the curse of sin. Work is honorable. But the second thought is, I think, in terms of women, getting out with the wrong men, and I think one of the panelists said it's because they probably think there are no good men remaining. I just want to leave you with the words of Jeremiah 29:11, where God says, I know the plans I have for you, plans for good and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. God has a good plan for you. So if you collaborate with him and if you seek God, then he's able to get you a wonderful man out there. There are some good men out there, and God can actually give you the ultimate hookup. Thank you so much.
Amen. Reverend Betty?
I think it's like Mr. Mbugua already stole from my mouth.
Okay.
But what I would say is that when you are standing on God,
yes,
there is nothing that is bad that will find you. Even what seems to be bad, it will work for good for you. So what am I saying? For those who are looking up and seeing a man who doesn't look like he's quite measuring up as it comes to being a breadwinner, there is hope. And he may be a man who never got an equal and qualified acceptance from the mother or the women in her life, on his life, or he's the man who was never given the admiration of his masculinity and he's just crying out for it. And so if you are a woman who knows how to be a woman of valor, you may just find a gemstone there that you unveil to this world that there is hope and way out. Thank you.
Very good. Rose, your parting shot?
Thank you, Sally. My parting shot is to all the women out there. If you're searching for that one person that will change your life, just take a look in the mirror. Thank you.
Thank you. It's loaded. Now, Pastor Rosemary, yes. Pastor Rosemary, as agreed, we are going to do a separate webinar for you. Have we agreed on that? Because I think, yes, because I'm so, it's because you've missed so much and I know you'd have contributed so much. So we are definitely going to do, I'm going to do one for you. But before we do that, just tell us, just give us some nuggets. Tell us what you're going to talk to us about. Just highlight, give us the headings, give us the bullet points. Give us the bullet points.
Okay, next time we have a Zoom meeting, I'm going to talk about communication in marriage, which is the greatest barrier for marriage progress. I'm going to talk about sex in marriage. In fact, I've discovered that the most quarrels and hate and all manner of disappointment in marriage, it is in this area, sex in marriage. I'm going to talk about the hope for the singles. And again, I'll be surprising the singles to know that some of them, they were born to be singles. So just like Paul. So when you discover, that's why maybe you might be in courtship, you get into a relationship, doesn't materialize. Maybe you are born to be a single and then you are just pushing yourself to marriage. So I'll be exploring many things, parenting. We'll talk about the marriage origin, who is the owner of this marriage? And because everywhere we are just running for counseling, we are not running to the manual, which is the Bible. What does the Bible say concerning my marriage? So we are going to talk about even the ministers as pastors and the wives. How do I balance ministry and family? Because we are too holistic that we come with the Holy Spirit at home. The man is speaking in tongues and the woman wants to hear sense. You know, we are going to talk how to balance marriage and ministry. At home, I'm a husband, I'm a family man. In church, I'm a pastor, I'm a bishop, whatever. So we are going to talk about many things and finance balancing. We are going to mention it because nowadays is like there's divided work, divided opportunity. That you see, like you say, like the woman should do this and this, the man should do it. It's like a law. So nowadays the woman is not even supporting. I have too much to talk about. So let me get there.
Yes.
Sally.
Thank you, Rosemary. And I know my women now are almost like why can't it be tomorrow? Why can't it be this week? I will organize. That's my promise. I will organize a webinar where you talk to us. I think this was of God's doing that you have something separate for you so you can talk to us on all these issues. And I will let the women know. So ladies and gentlemen, you have been listening and participating in the Seasoned Woman webinars. And these are conversations based on chapters in my books, the books I talked about at the beginning that I recently published and launched, but I had been writing them for years. So don't get impressed that I launched and published 7 books at one go. This is something I had been doing for several years. It took me almost like 2.5 to 3 years to come up with these books. And the material was there because of the mentorship. I'd already been doing the speaking engagements, the writings. It was there already. So it was a question of coming to a time when I compiled them by the grace of God. These books were written pursuant to a prophetic word that had been given by my spiritual mother, that was then backed up by several other men and women of God. So it was something that God had ordained I would do. And finally, I did, by his grace, come up with this book. They're available for sale at the Seasoned Women's Center in Lavington, Nairobi. And this will always be in our platforms and even on Amazon.com. So they're worthwhile you getting a hold of a copy or all of them and reading them. And these conversations we're having, these webinars are based on these books. I'm literally bringing those books to life. I'm bringing them to life so we can discuss. But the beauty of it is what we've been discussing in these webinars is way beyond what I've written. And that was the whole purpose, that you enrich. You bring so much more than what I've already covered in the books and expound it, and it becomes practical and we can talk about it. And it's just giving me so much food for thought for even doing other editions and even going on to write more books in the future. So I want to say good night because our time has reached. I want to say thank you to every panelist. I want to say thank you to Rose Musau. Thank you, Rose. You called it as it is. I know you're a good mother. I've watched that. And you're intentional. It's not by default, it's by design. And I really respect that. And I thank you for participating and being so open and so candid about it. And I like, Rose, you remind me, you always affirm your children. You always speak well of your children. And this is what I tell parents. If he's a good son, say so. Don't be shy about it. Yeah. Say your child is good. Your daughter is good. You're blessed. You are blessed. I don't know why we're shy. Christians are shy to say when they are blessed, when they're having a good life, when they have good children. We just want to talk about how bad things are. So thank you very much, Rose Musau. Reverend Betty, I can never have enough of you. As I said, when we were both speakers at a conference, I just knew you had to come and speak to my women. And I know you're nowhere finished. Me, I know my women and I know their issues. So you're nowhere finished talking to my women. And we're gonna organize more and more sessions. And I know right now, even I have requests already for those women who want to talk to you one-on-one on several issues that you've raised today. So thank you very much for being so generous. Coach Robert, thank you. As I told you the other day, this public demand, they said, Aunt Sally, if you're doing another webinar on suspect suitors, can you please make sure you invite Coach Robert? Because last time in the wolf in sheep's clothing, you were so excellent, Robert. You bore your heart out, you shared your past, you spoke of even the dysfunctional way you used to behave when before you came to the place of knowing Christ and walking with Christ. And it helped so many of the women in understanding how men operate and how they think. And I thank God for you, because even today, you have given of yourself, you have spoken openly, you have hit the nail on the head. And I really, really thank you, Coach Robert. And then with my cousin, Robert Mbugua, let me just add, this is my aunt, Reverend Judy Mbugua's son, such a man of valor. I really admire this cousin of mine. He's such a solid man, father, husband, man of God. He ministers the word so well. And I had to have him on this webinar because I knew he would bring very valuable insights on this subject. And it's not the last we've heard of him. And for my friend, Rosemary Carlos, as I said, we're going to do this again. And thank you even for making the effort of logging in when you finally could. Kenyans do not understand snow. So next webinar, you're going to explain to us, what is this snow that had hindered you from logging in? We don't have snow here, so you tell us about snow in Swaziland. Now, Kezi, my able consultant and assistant, thank you so much, Kezi. As usual, you do me proud. You're a wonderful, wonderful assistant. Thank you for putting this together. Now, the reason why Kezi is so important is because I know nothing about technology. The first webinar we had, I switched off and I took out everybody from the webinar way before we had finished. And she was left with my guests. And she was left alone with my guests. And I had logged out and I went home and I didn't know what I'd done wrong or which button I'd pressed. So I think it's important I explain that I'm not techno. So Kezi is valuable to me because she's able to put all this together and make sure I don't log people out. I don't press the wrong buttons. I have with me here a daughter of mine. I want you to see her. She's called Tekla. Tekla always comes in physically to help me with the webinars. And she's the one who tells me, Auntie, don't press there. Don't do that. You're twiddling too much. You're rubbing your nose too much. Don't do this. Sit still. She's my darling, darling assistant. She's my mentee and she is a professional. I think most of you who listened to the conversation on addictions, substance abuse a few weeks ago, she was one of our speakers, one of our panelists, and the feedback from what Tekla gave out, what she shared about dealing with the teens, young people and young adults on substance abuse. She was amazing, amazing. She serves me well. She's a good girl. And I really honor and respect her as a professional. So thank you, everybody. Thank you very much to our audience. And we will tell you when the next webinar is and what topic it will be. God bless you. I'll end up with by asking Robert. Robert, you're still there? Robert, please close with a word of prayer for us, please.
Okay, let's pray. Thank you, Lord God, because you are God. Thank you that in the beginning you ordained work. Until today, you're still working. Thank you for Sally and thank you for the great work she's doing. Thank you for all the people who logged in. Lord God, continually help us to remember that you have good plans for us. Help us not to be impatient, but to work with you to achieve those good plans. And as we go into the weekend and the rest of the new week and all that we'll be doing, please take care of us and our families and help the marriages in this nation to be strong and to be happy. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen, amen. Thank you, thank you, thank you, each one of you. May God bless you. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. God bless you.
Thank you, Sally,
Bye.
for having us.
Thank you.
Cheers.